Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining me today as I have the opportunity to present to you the Read Side by Side reading program, a comprehensive reading program for the English Language Arts classroom, grades 3 through 6. The Read Side by Side reading program is a 3-part curriculum that focuses on the transfer of skill. Part 1 is Read Aloud, which is whole class instruction. In the read aloud portion of the curriculum, the teacher reads the text out loud to the students as they follow along in their own copy of the text. Students receive explicit instruction in the skills and strategies of reading. In Part 2 of the program, students learn to transfer the skills and strategies they learned during Read Aloud into books that they are reading independently themselves. Students are matched to either a below, on, or above grade level title, offering that differentiated instruction. The third part of the Read Side by Side reading program is the opportunity for students to pursue an interest, both in school and at home, in their independent reading. Each one of these components makes up one unit in the Read Side by Side reading program, and 18 of these units make up the 3-6 design. This means that a student who has completed the program from grades 3 through 6 will exit 6th grade having read 36 chapter books. Today, as I give this presentation, you might want to follow along in our program guide, and you might also want to look at the titles for your grade level found in our product brochure. Each of these came in either your review kit or can be found online at readsidebyside.com. So again, I'm Sarah Collins, author of the Read Side by Side reading program, a classroom teacher who set out to solve a curriculum problem. When I taught in my 10 years teaching 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, I found that my students, as they moved up the grades, seemed to be losing their motivation and their excitement for reading. This confused me because it would make sense that as students move up the grades that they would become more and more interested in reading. It bothered me to know that my students were losing the joy, and I wanted to find out how we could do better in designing a reading curriculum to increase students' motivation and interest. I left the classroom to do some action research, returned to the classroom to test out my theories, and then founded Read Side by Side Publications in August 2011. The curriculum focuses on 4 pieces: motivation and interest, explicit instruction, the transfer of training, and the building of knowledge. Students read authentic chapter books and longer nonfiction in the program. They receive explicit instruction through scripted lessons that value teacher autonomy. They practice the transfer of training as they move from read aloud to book club to extended reading. The focus of the program is on the combination of 2 skills for transferring training, bridging and hugging, which I'm going to go over in this video. And finally, students increase their body of knowledge in the program as they learn key vocabulary, genres, and world knowledge. The first expectation of transfer of training is bridging. This is when students are explicitly taught how knowledge, strategies, and dispositions are used to solve comprehension problems. In the Read Side by Side reading program, we focus very strictly on the evidence-based strategies that increase students' success in comprehension. Those strategies include text structure, inference generation, the building of knowledge, all to achieve comprehension monitoring. These strategies are proven to give significant gains on standard measures of reading comprehension. Students practice these strategies each and every day in the Read Side by Side reading program. The second need for transfer of training is hugging. This is when the context of the initial learning and the context of the application are similar. Students use the same instructional routines. In the Read Side-by-Side reading program, the read aloud novel and the book club novels are closely matched. In this example, students read Earthquake Terror as a class and read aloud, and then they are matched to another survival story during the book club time. Additionally, the assignments that students do in the read aloud book directly match the assignments that they will be asked to do independently in the book club time. Bridging and hugging allow for students to increase their success. In the Read Side-by-Side reading program, the book club titles are carefully matched to the read aloud text. This match helps students move into higher, more complex novels. Catherine Snow tells us it is the match or mismatch between characteristics of genre, subject matter, and a reader's capabilities that determines the likelihood of successful comprehension. To use the Read Side-by-Side reading program in your classroom, 3rd through 5th grade teachers will need 90 minutes for reading instruction. We ask that they reserve a 45-minute chunk of the day for their read aloud and another 45-minute chunk of the day for book club. These two blocks do not have to be back to back, nor do they have to be in this order. So if a teacher wanted to, she could teach book club at the beginning of the day and reserve read aloud for the very end of the day. 6th grade has a little bit different schedule because we know that many 6th grade teachers have a shorter reading block time because they have that middle school schedule in which students move from classroom to classroom. And so to accommodate this middle school schedule, we have offered a 45-minute reading block for 6th grade. Students will receive a month and a half or 2 months of read aloud instruction, and when they complete that first read aloud unit, they will then shift into book clubs. The schedule looks like this. So for grades 3 through 5, both read aloud and book club will happen simultaneously, and in the 3-5 sequence, students read 10 books in one single school year. In the 6th grade design, they will alternate read aloud and book club across the year, reading 6 titles. Let's take a look at the schedule then and how that looks in a classroom. So the 45-minute read aloud time is going to be divided into these sections. It'll begin with a 10-minute vocabulary routine and then be followed by a 35-minute read aloud time. The only exception are on the days when students are writing. On writing days, students have the full 45 minutes to write. In this example here, you're going to see what the vocabulary routine looks like in the Read Side-by-Side reading program. Students receive a workbook, a copied workbook of all the vocabulary words that they will learn in the unit. And each day, one of those vocabulary words is targeted. So in this case, the students are learning the word injustice. The teacher begins by introducing the word. Students and teacher highlight morphemes and they look up their meanings in the glossary provided at the front of the book club handbook. Together, students and teachers read the context of the word and circle any context clues, and then they begin to think about what the word is. They will brainstorm synonyms of the word, but may also come up with phrases or expressions. And then they will think, where have I seen this word in the real world, and come up with some real world contexts. They will then go back up to think about what the word does not mean. So now they're coming up with antonyms of the word. Finally, students will sketch or write about a time when that word has come up in their own life. And this is to help cement the word into their lexicon. Finally, students are encouraged to use the learned vocabulary in the read aloud lesson during turn and talk, and during writing. Now that we've taken a look at how vocabulary is taught in the Read Side by Side reading program, let's take a look inside the unit guide at the lessons. The read aloud lessons all follow a similar lesson format, starting with connect, moving into an explicit teaching point, modeling from the text, and then bringing students into the thinking through guided practice. The guided practice routine has students turning and talking. This turn and talk routine is very structured. Each student is given the opportunity to share their thinking in response to the text, and then they're also given an opportunity to listen to a partner's thinking and respond. Turn and talk stems are the foundation for this component of the Read Side by Side design. Students respond by filling in a turn and talk stem. An example would be, when the book said blank, I was thinking blank because blank. This helps me understand blank. After a student shares their thinking using the turn and talk stem, their partner responds by either agreeing, disagreeing, clarifying, or adding on to thinking. Partners switch roles across the lesson, giving each student an opportunity to share and respond. Let's take a look at this in the classroom by watching a sample video of Shiloh.
So you learned a lot yesterday about taking care of pets and how to do that the proper way, and we don't think Judd Travers is doing a very good job. So we're going to continue to think about that today as we look at important events in Chapter 3. We're going to be keeping track of these important events on our important events list, and I'll have you copy those down into your notebook when we get to that part of the lesson, okay? And then we are going to continue to think about these problems that are happening in the book, all right? Today, we're going to be using a stem for our turn and talk. So eyes up. You'll be using the stem when the book said blank. I was thinking this was important because blank. All right? Now, green, you're going to be the first to share, all right? And blues, your responsibility is to just listen and respond, okay? But first, I'm going to share my thinking. All right? Are you ready? Okay. Chapter 3, page 18. I don't sleep more than a couple hours that night. When I do, I dream of Shiloh. When I don't, I'm thinking about him out in the rain all afternoon, head on his paws, watching our door. Thinking how I disappointed him, whistling like I meant something that first time, getting him to come to me, then taking him on back to Judd Travers to be kicked all over again. By 5 o'clock, when it's growing light, I know pretty much what I have to do. I have to buy that dog from Judd Travers. I don't let my mind go any further, don't dwell on what Judd would want for Shiloh, or even whether he'd sell. Especially don't ask myself how I'm supposed to get the money. All I know is that I can think of only one way to get that dog away from Judd, and that's what I'm going to have to do. And when the book said that Marty wants to buy Shiloh from Judd Travers, that makes me think that this is an important event here, because it tells me that he's going to start trying to get money in order to buy Shiloh. That actually makes me think of our word today, responsible, right? He's going to try to get some money to be able to buy Shiloh. Takes a responsible person to do that. Let's go ahead and put this on our chart. Would you open up to the important events list in your notebooks? Must walk 5 miles that morning, and all I find is 7 cans and 1 bottle. Greens, what's the big event here? Turn and talk to your partner. Why is that event important?
Another 45 minutes is given for book club instruction. This 45-minute chunk of time begins with a whole class mini lesson. It then moves into a time for students to work independently on the book that they've been assigned. This work time extends for 35 minutes and then ends with 5 minutes for students to collaborate with their partner and their peers. On some days throughout the unit, students are going to be pulled to the book club table for a book club discussion. When the teacher has the opportunity to lead book club discussions, she'll be given 2 full days, 2 45-minute days for her to meet with all of her groups. What is so unique about the book club design in the Read Side by Side program is it's structured to increase teachers' success managing 3, different titles. What we found is that when we structure the program accordingly, students are all practicing the same strategies and skills on the same day. Students read through each quadrant of the text at the same pace. Students who are in the lower book read less pages. Students who are in the higher book read more pages in one given day. Each day, the lesson is appropriate for all 3 groups, and so therefore the lesson is a whole class lesson. This communicates to students that we all need to practice the same strategies and skills no matter what book we're reading or what level we're at. Students meet only at the end of each quadrant in their book club groups. This frees up the teacher to be able to work with students as they need during that independent work time, either through conferencing with students or meeting with the lowest students in strategy group. Again, the lessons provided in the book club are completely scripted for the classroom teacher. The teacher has the teaching point for the day, the assignments that are going to be given to each of the groups, and also a structure for that share out time. Additionally, on the days when the teacher meets with the book club groups in discussion, those discussion questions and assignments are completely scripted for the teacher in the guide. Let's go ahead and watch a sample video taken from a classroom that's implementing book clubs.
We have been learning that good readers use the blurb to help them predict what will happen in the book. Today you are all going to begin reading quadrant 1 of your book club books. Notice how you wrote the name of each important character and information about him and her on your list. Now turn to page 8 in your book club notebooks. You will have 2 days to complete today's assigned reading. As you read, you will stop each time a new character is named in the text and add this name to the character list. Then you will read to find information about this character and add that information to the list. You will each be reading and completing your character list independently. If you need help, first go to your assigned partner to get help. If you are stuck, sign up for a conference and I will come and coach you and your partner in order to quickly help you get back on track. If you're looking here on page 4, this is a chant that they're giving. So is this king part of the story or is it part of the chant?
Chant.
So do you think that...
What's unique to the Read Side by Side reading program is the use of authentic literature. In each of the videos, you saw that students are holding in their hands books that you could find at the library or bookstore. These books are award-winning, rich in vocabulary and craft, and they represent characters of various backgrounds and groups. Most importantly, the titles have been selected to capture the interest of even the most reluctant readers, while at the same time helping to build teachers' capacity to recommend books for further reading. The program is genre-based. In other words, students spend an ample amount of time explicitly learning the different types of genres. They will be exposed to either 4 to 6 genres across a school year. Additionally, content areas will be addressed in the program, specifically social studies topics. For example, at 5th grade, students will learn about the American Revolution as they read the book Chains by Laurie Halse Anderson, and then read the corresponding nonfiction book American Revolution by D.K. Eyewitness. In the program, the books increase in level across the school year and also get more and more complex in terms of student interest. We believe that all students experience the pull of chapter book reading. It's really important to use the books that students crave to read and help them understand how reading a chapter book has a different text demand than reading picture books and articles. When students access chapter book reading, they have to hold on to thinking across days and weeks. They have to stop and summarize the text while reading, especially when they've set the book down for a couple of days and picked it back up. They have to revise their thinking as new information is read. They have to access a wealth of background knowledge, and they continually, page by page, have to stop and fix up their comprehension. We teach in the CIA reading program a text structure approach to reading that helps students break this process into manageable steps. They simply take the number of pages in the book and divide by 4. Then they put sticky notes in to mark the end of each quadrant. This sets students up to read using the CIA approach, which stands for collect, interpret, and apply. This 4-quadrant method is loosely based on the work of Adler. His theory for how to read a book, published in 1940, has sold millions of copies and is still popular today. The CIA approach stands for collect, interpret, apply, and breaks the thinking process into manageable steps. In quadrant 1, readers are going to collect critical information from the text. They will pay attention to the characters, the setting, the important events, and the problems. They will take notes throughout quadrant 1, and these notes will be used as they write a retell summary in order to monitor their comprehension. Once they have the story in their head, they will then move from quadrant 1 into quadrant 2, where they will now begin to interpret the author's craft. They will pay attention to key repeated words in the text, what the author is purposefully doing to bring them to the subject and then the central theme of the story. At the end of quadrant 2, readers will name a line of thinking. They will infer what they believe the author's central message is. As they move from quadrant 2 to quadrant 3, they will continue to interpret the text, this time focusing in on that theory of what they think the author's message is. They will now gather evidence to support that theory and reach the turning point, the place where the author's central message is revealed. They will stop at the end of quadrant 3 to write about the turning point. The final quadrant of the book is where students will now think about the application of the text to their own life. They will read without interruption all the way to the end of the book, and when they have finished, they will synthesize, evaluate, and integrate knowledge. This will all be done in writing as they write a synthesis summary and evaluation. This 4-quadrant approach is based on the plot line, and I'm going to play this video to further explain to you why dividing the text into 4 equal quadrants is so powerful. To help you understand the power of the 4-quadrant method, let's review the parts of the narrative plotline. The first part of the plotline is flat and is called the exposition. This is when the author introduces the reader to the characters, the setting, and the problem. The plotline then moves from flat to gradually rising. In this section of the plot, the rising action, The author creates tension, drawing the reader into the story. Eventually, the plot reaches a high point or climax. It is after the climax of the story that the plot moves downward, creating the falling action and the resolution. What happens when the reader divides the plot line into 4 quadrants? The first division marks the end of the exposition and draws the reader's attention to the big problem in the story. This big problem takes the plot from flat to rising. It creates the rising action. The second division marks the halfway point in the story and divides the rising action. Authors refer to this halfway point as the heart of the story, the place where their message first becomes visible to the reader. The third division marks the climax and turning point of the story. This is the place where the plot makes the most dramatic change. Here, the plot shifts from moving upward to downward. The turning point at the end of quadrant 3 is the most important event in the story because it changes the plot and reveals the author's message. The final division is obvious in that it marks the end of the story, the place where the reader stops and synthesizes their understanding of the whole story. You will find that dividing the text into 4 quadrants is more powerful than dividing the text into 3 sections, beginning, middle, and end, because in the 4-quadrant method, the reader's attention is drawn to the places where the plot shifts. These plot shifts are critical to the reader's understanding of and enjoyment of the story. The Read Side-by-Side reading program is the only comprehension program that teaches this innovative approach. Maybe the greatest strength of the Read Side-by-Side reading program is the volume of reading that students achieve. When you compare it to other popular reading programs, you see that the Read Side-by-Side reading program far outreaches the number of words students are going to read in a given year. In the guided reading program by Fountas and Pinnell, students average just under 40,000 words read per year. In the Basel programs, students average just under 90,000 words read per year, whereas in the Read Side-by-Side reading program, students read almost 300,000 words in one school year. Now, why is the volume of reading so important? It's because of the vocabulary acquisition that students will gain simply from the number of words read. We can use a formula to gauge how many words students gain in their vocabulary each school year in each of these programs. We know that to be college and career ready, students need to have gained 3,000 to 4,000 vocabulary words a year throughout grades 3 through 12. In the guided reading program, students are going to gain just under 500 words per year using our formula. In Basel reading programs, they're going to gain just under 2,000 words per year. And in the Read Side-by-Side reading program, students will gain almost 4,000 new vocabulary words a year, achieving the college and career ready benchmark. In 2017 and 18, we led an evaluation study of the Read Side-by-Side reading program. Our guided questions included: does the Read Aloud Book Club approach produce greater gains in comprehension and intrinsic motivation than guided reading? How well does motivation and volume of reading predict growth in reading ability? And how well does growth in comprehension predict growth in reading ability? We looked at 3 schools in Massachusetts. We had 18 classrooms using the Read Side-by-Side reading program and 17 classrooms using a combination of a Common Core Standards workbook, a book room of leveled readers, and the methods of guided reading by Fountas and Pinnell. In the Read Side-by-Side reading classrooms, The teachers conducted both the read aloud and the book club portion of the curriculum, completing 2 units of instruction. Students read 4 novels, 3 fiction and 1 nonfiction. Here you see the growth in reading scores. Blue represents the growth in classrooms using the guided reading approach. Orange represents the classroom growth in classrooms using the Read Side by Side reading program. Here, we tracked a change in students' reading motivation. Again, you'll see blue representing the guided reading group. Orange represents the growth and motivation for students in the Read Side by Side reading program. What makes this program special is that kids love the program because it makes them more excited about reading and increases their confidence in themselves. Teachers love the program because they see that it's written by teachers and easy to implement from day one. And administrators choose our program due to the increase in comprehension scores their schools achieve in just 6 months using the program. You can purchase the complete classroom set that includes teacher unit guides for both Read Aloud and Book Club, student novels for both Read Aloud and Book Club, student book club consumables, the starter classroom library, boxes and shelving, and with a district adoption, also will be included 1 day of on-site training and 3 Zoom sessions to be used throughout the school year. Consider adding additional trainings or video training. Now I'd like to take some time to consider your questions. You sent some questions to me ahead of time, and I'd like to go over some of those questions with you now. First of all, there was a bit of a concern with the 5th grade schedule. 5th grade apparently has a 45-minute chunk of time for teaching reading as opposed to the 90-minute chunk of time that we expect in the Read Side by Side reading program. Now, certainly one option would be to adopt the 6th grade schedule at 5th grade. However, that would reduce students from reading 10 novels a year to reading 6 novels a year. But that can certainly be done, and I would be, happy to help you select which units would be appropriate to do in such a schedule. Another option is to consider eliminating some things that you might right now have in place. So if you have a time of the day where students engage in kind of a free reading time, you might consider eliminating that, as it won't be needed anymore in the Read Side by Side reading program, as students will be reading 2 novels at all times. And so there isn't a need for a 30-minute, free reading time anymore. Also, we find that some teachers have trouble giving up their own read alouds that they've, enjoyed reading to their students over the years. And because you're going to be giving 45 minutes to the Read Side by Side read aloud, you no longer need, time to read that novel out loud. So you may find, if you have those 2 things in place, you may find that eliminating those things gives you 45 minutes back in your day. There are 2 places that we consider gaps in our program currently, and that is that the Read Side by Side reading program does not explicitly teach grammar usage and mechanics, nor does it explicitly teach spelling. However, our vocabulary routine certainly addresses morphemes and spelling patterns, and so it's kind of up to you whether you want to do more with that vocabulary routine to increase spelling. Additionally, in the program, students are going to practice writing opinion and argumentative pieces. They're going to practice writing informative, explanatory, and descriptive pieces. They're going to learn to produce clear and coherent writing. They're going to learn to gather relevant information from multiple sources and write for a range of tasks, purposes, and audiences. What they're not going to gain currently in the Read Side by Side reading program is practice developing narrative pieces of writing. Additionally, there isn't time or explicit lessons currently in the program to help students go back to a piece of writing and strengthen it. And so those areas of writing will need to be added. If you have a writing block already, consider using it as a place to teach grammar, spelling, and narrative writing, or any other writing projects that you believe you need to add into the program. I know that in the past you have used a Basil, and I know that the idea of doing book clubs is something new, and I just want to encourage you that moving in this new direction will be safe. While you are familiar with the routine that you currently use, these routines that we're giving you in the Read Side by Side reading program will soon feel just as comfortable, and these new routines are more viable. The scripted lessons will support you in your first year. We encourage you to just, read from the script. If that's your comfort level, that is certainly fine. And we believe that both you and your students are going to greatly benefit from having the opportunity to read quality literature together, both in Read Aloud and in Book Club. And I'm certainly here to provide any support that you need along the way. Additionally, we have an assessment book. I'm just realizing that in the slideshow it says coming fall of 2019, and we're actually still in the process of final edits. So we're now looking at January 2020. But in that book will be outlined our philosophy of assessment, how to learn about your students at the beginning of the year, and we will give you inventories, surveys, and conference forms for getting to know your students. We'll teach you how to use your existing screening assessment to match students to books, and we will also offer you running records for each one of our book club novels. Additionally, in that assessment book, we will give you formative assessment tools for collecting and interpreting data. Those will be rubrics that you can use with each and every one of the oral language and written assignments conducted in both the Read Aloud and the Book Club. We certainly don't expect you to grade every single assignment, but we give you the tools should you choose to do that. Most exciting is there's going to be a section in this book where we're going to teach you how to provide differentiated instruction and scaffolding for your lowest, most struggling students. So we are going to give you the tools and the strategies to increase students' fluency through dyad reading. We're going to teach you how to support students who struggle with decoding through a method called decoding by analogy. And we're going to further provide lessons for comprehension support that will help you work with students in one-on-one conferences as well as strategy groups. The last chapter of the assessment book is going to focus on grading. So how do I put all this together into a report card grade? And then how do I communicate students' strengths, areas for improvement, and their progress in reading to parents?